Why American manufacturing is becoming less efficient. Advocated, Advocates of industrial policy have long argued that possessed special powers. Industry's demands lead to technological progress. The goods it produces must pass the master of global markets, which drives up efficiency. Some then take things further. When countries grow richer, manufacturing moves overseas as firms seek to reduce labor costs. This, they say, justifies tariffs and uh, subsidies to protect manufacturing and boost growth. Making things matter, argued a recent column in the Wall Street Journal by Oren Cass, who runs American Compass, a think tank at the vanguard of the Republican Party's newfound protectionism. The problem is that of late, manufacturing powers seem to have vanished. Figures published on October 26 show that America's GDP, what it is, gross domestic product, jumped by 4.9% at an annualized rate in the third quarter of the year. Nearly 80% of output is now made up of services, but one might expect manufacturing at least to pull its weight, given its supposed powers. In fact, labor productivity in manufacturing fell by 0.2% at an annualized rate, meaning that the boost to growth was driven by services. To make matters worse, productivity in the manufacturing sector has been in secular decline since 2011, the first decade-long fall in the available data. See Chart 1. Some economists think it is probably also the first such fall in American history. What has prompted the reversal? Mr. Catt's favorite explanation. Trade policy can be dismissed. American manufacturing employment fell sharply in the early 2000s, in part owing to the integration of China into global trade. Some thinking that this China shock, which led to a wave of outsourcing, also caused productivity to decline by reducing the incentive for
incentive
also caused productivity to decline by reducing the incentive for American firms to invest. Yet productivity grew until 2011. Moreover, it also subsequently declined in subsectors that are mostly domestic and immune to trade, including cement and concrete production. A better clue is provided by what went well in early decades. During the 1990s and 2000s, manufacturing productivity soared, with the production of computers and electronics, especially semiconductor chips, leading the way. Games seem to have topped out at around the time things went wrong more broadly. In the early 2010s, all told, more than a third of the overall throwdown in manufacturing since 2011 is accounted for by computers and electronics. Yet problems with computers are not the whole story. Productivity has fallen in both durable manufacturing, which includes most tech, and the non-durable sort, which includes items like cigarettes and clothes. 14 out of 19 manufacturing subsectors from machinery to textiles saw decline during the 2010s. Perhaps all those computers have been put to poor use. America may be a technology superpower, but when it comes to using tech in the physical world, it lags behind others. It ranks 7th out of 15 countries in the adoption of a robot per worker, according to the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation, a think tank. South Korea, the world leader, used over 3 times more robots use over 3 times more robots per worker. More robots per worker. Use over 3 times more robots per worker. And after adjusting for average wages, richer countries tend to be more advanced. America ranks 11th. But it is not clear whether there was a big change in American manufacturers' adoption of tech compared with other sectors in the early 2010s. Indeed, the evidence points in the opposite direction. As Chad Severson of the University of Chicago knows, the ratio of capital to labor has actually grown slightly faster in manufacturing than in the private sector as a whole. If investment has not plummeted, 阻塞吗？暴跌吗？暴跌。
Plummeted.
If investment has not plummeted, plummeted. If investment has not plummeted, it must then be paying fewer dividends.
Dividend.
If investment has not plummeted, it must then be paying fewer dividends. Low-hanging fruit might have been plucked more eagerly in manufacturing. Pluck fruit. This idea is supported by the fact that industrial productivity growth has slowed across the rich world, even if not by as much as in America. See Chart 2. The extra bit of American underperformance is trickier to explain. Economists throw out a boatload of hypotheses. 悲观的，推论吗？Sorry. Hypothesis. The extra bit of American underperformance is trickier to explain. Economists throw out a boatload of hypotheses. America is known to have laxer antitrust enforcement than its peers. Perhaps scrutiny was especially needed in the manufacturing sector. Maybe American manufacturing was more advanced when robots arrived on the scene, so bad less to gain. So had less to gain. Some have even argued that because America's software and interest sector have been so lucrative, talent has been diverted away from older industry. Divert. Divert. Is it pronounced divert?
Divert.
Yeah, it's correct. Divert. Could things change? Industrial policy advocates hope that America's subsidies for chips production and green tech will lead to a manufacturing renaissance, 复兴 Renaissance. Could things change? Industrial policy advocates hope that America's subsidies for chip production and green tech will lead to a manufacturing renaissance. The idea is to boost productivity by enticing companies and investment to cluster in a given region, much as Shenzhen in China used its status as a special economic zone to become an impressive manufacturing hub. A breakthrough in robotics or artificial intelligence could push things along. Just as information technology led to a surge in productivity from 1995 to 2004. For the moment, though, this is just speculation, and American manufacturing needs all the help it can get. Is Ukraine's counteroffensive over? The Ukraine war is at a stalemate. Stalemate. The Ukraine war is at a stalemate. General Valery Zelensky, Ukraine's commander-in-chief, acknowledged so himself in a recent interview with The Economist. The long-awaited counteroffensive, which began in earnest on June 4th, has fizzled. 麻痹吗？ has fizzled. The Ukraine war is at a stalemate. General Valery Zelensky, Ukraine's commander-in-chief, acknowledged so himself in a recent interview with The Economist. The long-awaited counteroffensive, which began in earnest on June 4th, has fizzled, with few territorial gains or losses on either side. Below are two charts and a map that help explain the latest development. Our first chart is from The Economist War Tracker, which uses satellite data to monitor war-related activity. We track files detected by firms assistant originally set up by NASA to detect wildfires. Our machine learning model then estimates which of these are caused by the conflict from explosive. Say, the system can be hindered by a range of factors including weather conditions and incorrect labeling by our model, but over a long period it can systematically sys- sys- system, systematically
Systematically.
it can systematically trace patterns in the finding patterns.
Pattern.
Our first chart is from the Economist War Tracker, which uses satellite data to monitor war-related activity. We track fires detected by firms, a system originally set up by NASA to detect wildfire. Our machine learning model then estimates which of these are caused by the conflict from explosives. Say, the system can be hindered by a range of factors.
Hindered.
Can be hindered by a range of factors, including weather conditions and incorrect labeling by our model. But over a long period, it can systematically trace patterns in the fighting. Model correctly picked up the operations in late May that laid the groundwork for the subsequent push in June. By mid-August, nearly 1,000 war-related fires were detected daily as Ukraine forces fought their way south towards Russia's main defensive line in Zaporozhye Oblast. 战场
Oblast.
eventually liberating Ruptny on August 28th. Since October 13th, however, we have detected fewer than 300 strikes on days with relatively clear skies, suggesting a slowdown. Our second chart shows how much territory has changed hands using regularly updated maps from the Institute for the Study of War, a think tank. We can calculate how much of Ukraine has been taken or lost by Russia since the start of the war in 2022. ISW's maps use open sources such as footage and satellite imagery to assess areas of control. Data show the massive gains by Russia in the early days of fighting, followed by significant losses as Ukraine mounted its impressive defense. During Ukraine's counteroffensive last autumn, Russia lost 13% of the land it occupied. By comparison, the counteroffensive this year had led to almost no lasting gains by Ukraine since June 4th. Our map shows where the current fighting is taking place. The axis in the south includes Robotny and the push towards the city of Tokmak, which one Ukrainian general described as the minimum goal for the offensive. Ukraine officials said that because they are conducting small unit attacks on foot rather than large armed thrust, they can keep attacking even as winter softens up the ground, but ammunition remains constrained, and the reduction in fires suggests that shells may be becoming scarce just as North Korea's shells begin flowing to Russia at scale. Another area of heavy fighting is in Avdiivka.
Avdiivka.
It's in Avdiivka, near Donetsk city, where Russian forces are trying and failing to take a heavily fortified town that they surrounded on this site. A third area of fighting is to the east of Kherson city, where Ukrainian forces in recent weeks have managed to establish and hold a beachhead on the south side of the Dnipro, a tactical victory that has enabled them to funnel heavy equipment across the river. Funnel. To the Ukrainians' credit, in moving slowly, they have probably avoided the enormous losses suffered by Russian forces. Ukrainians have shown that with support from the West, they can put up a tough fight. The fight continues. Our data suggests that the counteroffensive's big push is over, not what the war is. Ukrainian partners should plan for a long fight. Yes, I also think this is right. I think Ukraine's counteroffensive has failed. Of course I support Ukraine, but we have to admit the truth. And I agree that Ukrainians should be prepared for a long fight rather than a fresh one. David Kirk believes safe sport repress people's imagination. Repressed. It nearly didn't happen. The woman, in this case, two sisters of one of the would-be jumpers, had warned the police and they had staked out the bridge. The jumpers themselves, who had partly all night and treasured a rather elegant Bristol flat, didn't feel entirely in the pink either, but the storm had to happen. But the stunt had to happen because invitations had been sent April Fool's Day 1979. Clifton Suspension Bridge, Bristol, bungee jumping at dawn, morning dress.
Bungee.
David Kirk was ready to go first. He was older than the other by a decade, heavily bearded, though on that day swathed in a scarf, in case his mother recognized him when it all hit the papers, and founder of the dangerous sport club to which they all belonged. He was therefore the leader, though ideas for stunts flowed generously between them as they caroused in the pubs and bars of Oxford. This particular one came from a TV documentary about young men jumping off bamboo platform in
Vanuatu.
In Vanuatu, with only a vein tied around one's ankle to break them to break their fall. Why shouldn't Oxford students prove their manhood in the same way? Some clever people belong to the DSC, all proud to spot the club tie of a bloody civil virtue on a black ground. One become a rocket scientist at NASA, another a Treasury minister. Apparently, they had worked out the force extension curves of the elastic ropes they had tied to the bridge. 245 feet above the oven, and felt confident. The leader never bothered with a weight test, on the simple principle that if he did, what he was about to do would not be dangerous. What the fuck? Whoopee was his only thought.
Whoopee.
Whoopee was his only thought. So he flung his morning suited legs over the parapet and dropped. It fell like a stone, and the wind took his top hat off, and he dropped his bottle of champagne. And he dropped his bottle of champagne, but it bounced back up, so the other three dropped after him. The police nabbed them all in their jubilant state and extracted a promise not to do it again. They did it all over the place, so began a worldwide craze and in New Zealand a multi-million-dollar industry. Fame and fortune he dismissed, though fortune eluded him anyway, and he never held down a proper job. Other people's bank accounts propped him up, while he dedicated his life to the pursuit of danger, literature, red wine, and the art of losing his wallet when restaurant bills arrived. Uncle Dodge, his friends called him. Adventuring was in his blood, with an alpinist father who trained it on the roofs and spires of Cambridge. Recklessness was his character. He was driven too by sheer scorn for formal sports, so hamstruck by instructions that they were no longer fun. Bungee. In bungee jumping, there were no rules. It was pure artistry, a beautiful commitment of the body to air and space. He felt the same about hung gliding and micro-gliding, other brand new sports he could tailor to his widely sought, such as drifting in a gorilla suit round the Houses of Parliament while playing the saxophone. Cluster balloon, ballons, balloon. Cluster ballooning was something else he pioneered, piloting across the channel in 1986 a giant inflatable kangaroo held up by 4 helium balloons. He sat cosily in the punch as they drifted over to some fine wind original on the other side at 10,000 feet. A jumbo jet had to take action to avoid him. As the Times editorial remarked, if the pilot has not acquired permanent sardonic more than a facial tic and the tendency of wake screaming from his sleep. Airborne kangaroos must be much more common over the channel than most of us had hitherto supposed. The police fined him 100 pounds for flying without a license. Skiing was an especially boring sport until he applied Serenism to it. Surrealism. He applied surrealism to it. Each season from 1983, he encouraged DSC members to swoosh down the slope of St. Maurice in whatever might do for conveyance, an irony board, a grand piano while playing a dude.